Is there such a thing as Sola Scriptura? If we take a look at the roughly 2.5 billion Christians in the world, about 50% of them would be Catholic, 37% Protestant, 12% Orthodox, and the remainder 1% would not fit into any of these categories. Catholics, of course, reject the idea that theology should be based on the Bible alone, as also do Orthodox Christians. The 1% others category typically involves groups like the Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses, who have their own prophets and authority figures and therefore don't rely on the Bible alone. This brings us to the Protestant category, who after all did coin the catchphrase Sola Scriptura. We have to recognize, however, that over the past 5 centuries since the Reformation, many Protestants, although unsure about the exact percentages, have moved away from the high view of Scripture held by the Reformers towards a more liberal view of Christianity. What is even more interesting, however, is that most of the remaining Protestants who do still hold to Sola Scriptura mean something very different by the phrase than one might expect. They believe that Scripture cannot be understood correctly unless guided by the writings of the early church fathers. They believe that the early tradition of the first 3 or 4 centuries after Christ is trustworthy, and it is only the later tradition that cannot be trusted. Moreover, this tradition is necessary to determine which of the different possible interpretations of Scripture is the correct one. Early tradition establishes the parameters within which the Sola Scriptura theology should be done, according to the Protestant perspective. Unfortunately, what this means is that not even most Protestants do theology with the Bible alone. Which brings us to the final segment of conservative evangelicals or fundamentalists who still hold to the true Sola Scriptura principle. While this group is well-intentioned, however, it has not found a way to escape the interpretation problems that drove other Protestants away from Sola Scriptura to begin with. In disregarding tradition and orthodoxy, they adopt instead relativism, subjectivism, and theological chaos, resulting in an endless number of conflicting perspectives, all claiming to be based on Sola Scriptura. Many theologians today believe that it is not in fact even possible to base theology on the Bible alone. Orthodox theologian Clark Carlton articulated this view quite well. The idea that the Scriptures are self-interpreting is patently absurd. It assumes a degree of absolute objectivity that would make the most ardent positivist cringe with embarrassment. Texts do not exist in the abstract. Yet this is exactly what the doctrine of Sola Scriptura assumes. A bare text thus somehow imposes its meaning on the reader. Nonetheless, even though the quest for Sola Scriptura has mostly met with failure, logically speaking, a true Sola Scriptura theology is in fact still possible. Interpretative methods exist that can avoid relativism, subjectivism, and theological chaos without the need to rely on early tradition or other external factors. The Sola Scriptura Zoom Church is a place dedicated to exploring the parameters of a true Sola Scriptura theology. The document entitled the Sola Scriptura Manifesto, along with its accompanying videos and podcasts, explains how such a methodology would work, why it is important, and how a Sola Scriptura theology can remain viable even in light of modern concerns such as science and higher criticism. Discussion, debate, and fellowship around the topic are encouraged. Find us at solascripturazoomchurch.com or the Sola Scriptura Zoom Church Facebook page. A YouTube channel and podcast with the same name are available as well, while the Sola Scriptura Manifesto document can be downloaded from bit.ly/Sola Scriptura Manifesto.